evening, this is vk3sl and welcome to the late evening emissions on Friday nights. We inhabit the space to complete tone tests on 160 and VHF, and later on UHF will switch across when we usher Frank in around about midnight tonight. So the name of the game is to sample selections from the collection here and just to wallow in some nostalgia. And we'll expand upon a few themes a bit later on. Well, it's always a time-honoured tradition to start off with something from the 20s, but this time something a little bit different. We've got a recording on the table of the HM Coldstream Guards, all the way from Coldstream near Lilydale. And they're going to play for us Youth and Vigour March. Yes, we'd be upstanding for HM Coldstream Guards, a recording from the early 1920s. It goes way back. That record is an acoustic disc, and it was I think it deserved a play. And we have another one on the other table, and of similar ilk. Sort of feel in a martial mood this evening, so we'll hear Walter Rogers and his band, and the King Cotton March from about the same time. Another acoustic disc. VK3SL testing. Striking up the band, Walter B. Rogers and the King Cotton March. Again, from the, I don't know, about 1923, 24. It's an early Brunswick there before they went to the fated light ray process a couple of years later. And what we're doing here is just testing using vintage source material, and we are emitting on 160 metres, that's 1865 kilohertz, and also on VHF, that's channel D, 145, 147, sorry, 0.475. We'll QSY up the band, or into the next band, when we usher Frank in around about midnight. So, folks, we've just been keeping our usual indulgences in the afternoon, so refer people if they feel inclined. There are missions almost every day, the end of the day, during the grey line period. And we do the same thing, and Frank and I spin the discs, and it's all creates a nice little ritual for the late afternoons. Well, on the table there's an old Zonophone, and this record happens to be Mr. Confrey, Zez Confrey and his band, and it's a Shimmy Charleston disc. I think it's, what's it called? I'll have a look. It's called Charleston Chuckles. Yes, Charleston Chuckles, Shimmy Charleston, and this is an example where brass band music starts to change its flavour. You'll see. vk3sl. Charleston Chuckles, says Godfrey and the band. And I'm sorry to say we did drop off D for a bit then. I'm not sure what's going on there. We'll shortly be curious why. So if we do lose D, we will be up the band on 430, 438.725. So that's where we'll head. And if we have further problems, I'll move there immediately. So while things are still cooking, we can make that announcement. Okay, well, one of the projects this week has been sort through a large stash of 16-inch transcription discs, and amongst them are some recordings from the ABC in the 1940s, and they're musical programs. Most of the material's not that interesting, but I did find a disc today with some ABC announcements on it. Interested to know who the announcer is on this. I think it's recorded in Sydney. And we'll play a bit of it anyhow. We'll hear what he has to say and a sample straight off the disc using original equipment, really, using the buyer and an autophone. And we'll tune in and have a listen now. I'll just get this sorted in the groove. And Cinemusical, it's a program called Radio DeVille. So anyhow, we'll let the official announcer explain.
The ABC now brings you the 55th of the series, the Philip Lewis all-soundtrack feature, Cinemusical.
Tonight I offer a melodious gusher, Radio DeVille. This, as the title implies, is what I consider would go to make an all-star radio vaudeville show. Started off by a band number, of course. And remembering 20th Century Fox's Orchestra Wives, how's about Glenn Miller with vocalists Ray Eberly and Lynn Berry with At Last. After that musical start, time for comedy, methinks, in Radio Deville. If I turned on that clown prince of Hollywood, Bob Hope, aided, abetted, and distracted by that other disturber of Dorothy Lamour, you know, what's his name, runs racehorses as a sideline. Oh yes, Bing Crosby. Well, if you got those two, I don't think there'd be a complaint in the house. So to those terrible two, those fearful cheerfuls who prove that irritation is the flattest form of sincerity, as they were seen and heard in Paramount's Road to Utopia, and when they vowed eternal friendship.
Well, here we are, off on another road. Oh, and what a road. Chase those trees, that snow, that scenery, and that sky. Yeah, and get a load of that bread and butter. Bread and butter, that's a mountain. Maybe a mountain to you, but it's bread and butter to me. We'll keep it shady.
I'm in a hurry.
Think you can handle it by yourself?
Helen, I was raised up here. Mice! Mice!
I don't care where I'm going, just as long as I'm with you. Put it there, pal. Put it there. You know, I saw Let's Face It. Yes, and I saw Dixie, too. Big fixer, huh? Put it there, pal. Put it there. This country's full of wolves, but you should make
And I think we'll dispense with cinema dubs in fourth generation quality. It's pretty average, but we did get the plum in the mouth ABC announcements there. So I'm keen to work out who it was, and it would be, yes, good to find out. So yeah, a bit of nostalgia in authentic fashion, and I think 2 meters is holding up for the time being. We'll QSY when we usher Frank in a bit later. We'll check in between. So there we go. That's our OTR offering for today, and I will in due course dub that one off and pop it up on YT. And on the other side of that disc, actually, there is a couple of announcements as well. We played one this afternoon, and there's also a rehearsal or an error where things don't go quite how they planned. We'll give you that little sample. Here it is, and you can hear for yourself.
And so ends the 54th of the series, the Philip Lewis all-soundtrack feature Cinemusical, which brought to you tonight Radio Deville. Listen in to this same station next Sunday night for another Cinemusical, in which, by courtesy of Universal...
Cut it again, isn't it? Tip it. I'm sorry. Down.
And so ends the 55th of the series, the Philip Lewis all-soundtrack feature Cinemusical, which brought to you tonight Radio Deville. Listen in to this same station next Sunday night for another Cinemusical, in which, by courtesy of Universal International Films, will be a preview of their forthcoming Diana Durbin starrer, Something in the Wind, with Donald O'Connor, John Dahl, and Metropolitan Opera star Jan Pearce in support. So remember, Something in the Wind, in next Sunday's Cinemusical, which is edited, written, and narrated by Philip Lewis.
So I think that's the only Cinemusical disc with announcements. All the others don't have announcements. There's about 6 or 7 of them here. And so I think that's the only one really worth pursuing and putting up on the tube. But the musical content can be found in much better quals and other places. But it's the announcements that are signatures of the times. Right, well, on the table I've also got a London 78 from the 1950s. And this record I dedicate to Mr. Stew.
I discovered the valley of the shifting, whispering sands while prospecting for gold in one of our western states. I saw the silent windmills, the crumbling water tanks, the bones of cattle and burros picked clean by buzzards, bleached by the desert suns. I stumbled over a crumbling buckboard nearly covered by the sand, and stopping to rest, I heard a tinkling, whispering sound and suddenly realized that even though the wind was quiet, the sand did not lie still. I seemed to be surrounded by a mystery so heavy and oppressive, I could scarcely breathe. For days and weeks I wandered aimlessly in this valley, seeking answers to the many questions that raced through my fevered mind. Where was everyone? Why the white bones, the dry wells, the barren valley where people must have lived and died? Finally, I could go no farther. My food and water gone, I sat down and buried my face in my hands, and resting thus, I learned the secret of the shifting, whispering sands. How I managed to escape from the valley, I do not know. But now, to pay my final debt for being spared, I must tell you what I learned out on the desert so many years ago.
The Shifting Sands, the ultimate test record. And I didn't realise, but we do have a copy here in the new box. We've been sorting, and there's several crates of records which are presently being looked through, and that happened to be there, along with quite a lot of 50s pop. So, yeah, we might have a few 50s missions in the next little while. Well, I'm just going to get organised and send off Frank a Zoom connection. And what we'll do, while we're getting sorted with that, I will put on another record that surfaced. Happens to be Ella Fitzgerald's very first record. This is a recording she made for Decca, and I think about 1936. And it's with Chick Webb and his orchestra, and it's A Tisket, a Tasket.
A tisket, a tasket, a brown and yellow basket. I send a letter to my mommy. On the way I dropped it. I dropped it, I dropped it. Yes, on the way I dropped it. A little girlie picked it up and put it in her pocket. She was trucking on down the avenue, but not a single thing to do. She went peck, peck, pecking all around. When she spied it on the ground, she took it, my little yellow basket. And if she doesn't bring it back, I think that I will die. A tisket, a tasket, I lost my yellow basket. And if that girlie don't return it, don't know what I'll do. Oh dear, I wonder where my basket can be. Oh, gee, I wish that little girl I could see. Oh, why was I so careless with that basket of mine? That itty bitty basket was the joy of mine. A tisket, a tasket, I lost my yellow basket. Won't someone help me find my basket and make me happy again? Was it green? No, 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 no. Was it red? No, 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 no. Was it blue? No, 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 no. Just a little yellow basket. A little yellow basket.
Ah, yes. That was very young, 16-year-old Ella Fitzgerald on that recording. And Frank, I've just sent you a link. I'm a little bit slow off the mark. The computer is running slow today. So, yeah, hopefully you'll get it soon. And while we're getting sorted, I've also happened to have Billie Holiday's very first record from a few years prior. This one from 1933. It features Benny Goodman and his orchestra. And this is her very first recording, also at the age of 16. It's a track called My Mother's Son-in-Law. This is vk3sl testing. Wasn't she wonderful?
Was she ever?
Billie Holiday and her very first record in November 1933.
I can't think of a better way of being ushered in than by my two favourite female jazz singers.
Great. I thought that there might be a resonance there. That's good. Well, look, what I'm going to do, I haven't organised the QSY yet, so I'm going to just quickly sort that. So what I might do is I'll play another one from the same session, and it's a track called Riffing the Scotch. And Yeah, it's another great song.
I've done that.
Yes, I
To
think.
my sorrow.
Yeah, I think we've all had that experience. But yeah, again, a young Benny Goodman and a young Billie Holiday, and these guys are just on fire. Incidentally, folks, do tune up to 70 centimetres. That's 438.725 megahertz, and I'll very shortly QSY.
cheating man and got a no-count lie. Swipe the old one for the new one. Now the new one's breaking my heart. I jumped out of the frying pan right into the fire. Lord, right into the fire.
There we go, and another recording from the very young Billie Holiday in 1933, and she didn't go back into the studio until 35, a couple of years later, and she made a series
what
of...
happened?
Oh, I think she was just doing lots of solo work, and I just don't think she recorded for whatever reason, and she made a few in those. I think there's about half a dozen that she made in those early sessions, and then she then moved on and worked with Teddy Wilson and made a lot of recordings with Teddy Wilson in 1935-36.
You know, right from the get-go, she had this incredible sense of rhythm and just singing her own timing, not timing, but her own sense of the beat and around the beat.
Yes, it's manifest there early on. It's all there. Yeah.
No one does it quite as well as she does it.
I think it's in her DNA, Frank.
Well, her father was a muso. It was a jazz muso.
Yeah. I don't think it was a happy situation, though. I think she was a product of a rape or something. So it's really horrible.
Well, she's written a book, I imagine, with some help.
Yeah.
And it started off, as I recall, that when my mother and father were married, my mum was 17, my dad was 18, and I was 3.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah,
that sets the scene.
It certainly does set the scene. Yeah, poor thing. I think the story is that she was raped. I think it's really awful. There's a horrible backstory to her life. Early on, she had a really hard time, and she came from not only an impoverished and difficult background, but she had a lot of struggles with her own.
I think she did. She was a sex worker for a time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so there's probably plays into that narrative. It's really quite challenging to even contemplate what she had to endure, incredible artist. I don't think there's any singer really who has that natural feel, except for maybe Louis Armstrong does. I think Louis
gets close, but that he doesn't quite have her voice.
No, he doesn't have her voice. No. Yeah, but
I think he's got an equally sort of innate sense of what jazz is about, and the syncopation that's involved with it.
Yeah.
And the sort of freedom of syncopation.
Well,
it's
that's
not
it.
like
It's just playing around the beat. It's just not. It's just being sort of. I don't know. It's not being sort of too overly structured and swinging, innately swinging, I suppose.
Sort of liberated, really. It's a sort of liberation from the beat in a sense.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, she's keeping time, but she's not sort of imprisoned by the beat.
No,
she's just doing her own thing.
She's very comfortable in just sort of progressing without any. Without having to sort of align herself.
That's what I'm trying to say. I think it's a non-aligning thing. She just does her own. Sinatra does it to a degree, but not as well as she.
Yeah, I think other people sort of learnt that skill through hanging around jazz musicians a lot. But I think with her, it's something it's. I mean, blues singers do it too. It's very much a part of that wonderful abandon that goes with singing, and I think that's a big part of it. I think if you're too sort of taught as a singer, it's not necessarily as easy to capture that freedom. But I think a lot of singers are over-schooled, which is a problem. Or a lot of musicians in that age were too. But it's a really interesting subject. Yeah, I'm starting to wake up. So I fell asleep earlier on. I started these missions. I can't even remember the first half hour of the program. I sort of drifted in here, switched things on, and then I'm starting to wake up. So, yeah.
Well, I dozed off during Clint's missions, and I woke up and he was halfway through his callback. So
really?
I managed to get things together in time to call in.
Sure.
So he said he listened for a while tonight.
Oh, good. I was listening for a bit while I was lying down on the bed. I was listening to a bit too. And he had a guest on, I think, or something.
Yes, he had a woman who was actually recording from YouTube of this lady who works in, she talks about space weather, which is one of very interesting topics.
Yeah.
She talked at some length, and she's on YouTube. We gave some details on how to hear.
Yeah.
But she was good. She was excellent.
Yeah, that's great. That was nice to hear that, but I also had my dose. Yeah, well, we've got a few, talk about riffing the Scotch, we've got a few themes to riff on now, so to unpack as we do.
Yeah, that's the one, yes.
Yeah. So Coleman Hawkins, my goodness me, where to start? Oh, look, thank you for the, I have to say I've been a bit remiss. I've got your list here, but I'm going to have to dial them up on the fly because...
I'm sorry that I didn't send links. I'd find
No, that's fine. It's no problem about getting the links going. It's just that, usually I'm a little bit more organised, but that's fine. We can proceed and we can sort of look at, I think people are aware of Coleman Hawkins, and he's one of these musicians who really straddled really from the brass band era right through to the bebop era, really. He sort of moved with the times, which is extraordinary.
I can't think of anyone else. There would be people, but I don't know of anyone else who had that extended lifespan and embraced all of these different styles.
Yes, Earl Hines probably did to an extent too.
I guess he did, although he finished a bit early. I don't think Earl really got to bebop.
No, I think you're right. I think he didn't sort of transcend or move into that zone, into the more contemporary forms of jazz. That's true. So,
but Hawkins not only did he embrace them, but he was on the leading edge of them.
Yeah, quite extraordinary, really. He had a very good ear, and he had a very masculine approach to playing the saxophone. He had a very big sound, and he had a very almost vocal-like quality to his sound, and that's evident right from the start. And there was some really interesting quotes. I did earlier on in the evening. I did have a read around, and there's a really interesting obituary in the New York Times from 1969 when he passed away. And it talks all about his involvement with Fletcher Henderson and developing his sound. And he said he always played with a stiff reed, and there was a sort of a slap technique saxophone players used. Rudy Whiteolf and all the early players used, and the players were more involved in vaudeville and sort of less syncopated styles of popular music in the early days. And he sort of moved beyond that technique and developed a really sort of very powerful, robust, big sound, wide vibrato, and a long sense of line, very vocal-like, really. So there's sort of a few characteristics of Mr. Hawkins, which sort of always he stayed with, but he moved with he developed his harmonic sense enormously over his career. And that's the extraordinary thing, is that he was able to do that. Now we can hear something very early. We've got a few examples, and here's one going back, would you believe, to 1923. So this is early days, and we'll hear him with Fletcher Henderson and the group, and it's called Dickie Blues, and we'll hear a chorus from Mr. Hawkins downstream a little bit. Let's have a listen. Recording from September 1923, a very young Coleman Hawkins with the Fletcher Henderson Band. And
19 or 20, actually.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's amazing.
He was born in 1904.
Very good. Well, he was a young man and he had a very robust, meaty sound. He was driving that, wasn't he? It was great.
That's right.
Yeah. He says
Well, that's what the tenor can do.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he sort of put the tenor on the map because there was sort of more alto, C melody sax, so I think soprano sax was used. I don't think tenor was used a lot before him in jazz ensembles. Not much. And it says here, he's got a quote from him in his obituary. It says, when I started, I used to play very loud because I was trying to play over 7 or 8 other horns all the time. I used to work on those reeds all night to make them sound. So he made his own reeds. Having to play loud developed the fullness of my sound. And now it goes on to say that the power with Mr. Hawkins played his saxophone was vividly recalled by Rex Stewart, the cornet. Rex Stewart also played in. He played in the Fletcher Henderson band. He actually took over from Louis Armstrong when he left in 1924.
Oh, did he? Yes,
and for a short period.
Later on, went on to greater things too. Did you play with Whiteman?
No, I don't think so.
Right.
No, Whiteman didn't have any black musicians in his band at that point.
Okay.
So he couldn't. It was. I think.
It wasn't done.
Yeah. I know. No, I'm not me. I apologise. That's just one of the terrible circumstances. Now, it says the power with Mr. Hawkins played his saxophone was vividly recalled by Rex Stewart, the cornetist, who once received an emergency call to fill in with the Henderson band after 2 trumpet players were injured in an accident. One of those injured was the first trumpet. En route to the job, Mr. Stewart wondered who had been called in to play the first trumpet part. On arrival, Mr. Stewart said, we set up, and much to my surprise, Coleman, on tenor, took over the first trumpet book, and not only played the part so well that we scarcely missed the first trumpet, but also carried the orchestra with volume such that I never heard coming out of a tenor sax. There we go. That's a testimony, isn't it?
That's right.
That's fabulous. Great stories there. And about the early days of Coleman Hawkins. But it is interesting. He's on a lot of those recordings with Fletcher Henderson from the 23-24 period. Many of them he doesn't play solos. He's just in the ensemble. But he's sort of strengthening the bass line. So, there we go. That's an early example. Later on, he moved on to the Mound City Blue Blowers, which was another... an ensemble featuring Red Allen and other black musicians. And there's some great examples of that group as well, quite a few. So we can have a look here. And here we go. Here's one, If I Could Be With You, 1 hour tonight. I think that's one of the Mound City ones. We'll sample this one now from about 1929. Wait a minute. I'm going to just bring it to the... beginning. I can hear myself in the background there, Frank.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, hold on. No, you can't.
That's all right. No worries at all.
I'm sorry.
It's not a problem at all. It's just a bit disconcerting
yes,
for me.
I know. It's extraordinary. Well, it's a wonder it didn't disconcert me.
Oh, you can manage. I'm hopeless like that. I can't multitask when I hear myself coming back. Anyhow, let's have a listen to If I Could Be With You 1 hour tonight. And again, Coleman Hawkins. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, this is not the one I wanted to play. That's the one... I've stuffed this up big time. Sorry, folks. We'll underscore that one and we'll come back to it in a minute because there's 2 recordings of that song and I was going to play them in contrast to each other.
Oh, yes.
Because one was made...
That was the later one, yes.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll see if we can
hang on, we've jumped a few years here.
Yes, I know. That's it, but I'm trying to find the file. Where's the file? Yeah, sorry, folks. This is all a bit disheveled, a bit disorganized. Here we go. Look, I tell you what, I'll play another one and I'll get myself organized in the interim. Here's one called Hello Lola.
Oh, Hello Lola. Here we go.
Yeah. Queuing.
Okay. Yes.
that is some track. They are on fire on that recording, and that's one of the best tenor solos I've heard from that period, featuring
Very nice.
Coleman Hawkins. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, that is interesting because that is an interracial recording because that does feature, would you believe, Glenn Miller is the trombone player on that, a very young...
Yeah. He was good too.
Yeah, very good. He's a teenager, very young Glenn Miller.
Yeah.
And Eddie Condon, the banjo player, he's white, and Pops Foster and Gene Krupa was also on the drums there. And, of course, Gene Krupa...
He would have been very young as well.
He would have been. They would have been teenagers. So there we go. The Mountain City Blue Blowers with Coleman Hawkins. What a great track. I thought everything about that worked well. They were really sort of on the edge, though. They had lots of youthful exuberance, I thought.
They did.
It was great stuff. So there's more. What we can do, we can bookend these other two recordings now, the ones I was trying to sort out before. And, it's If I Could Be With You 1 hour tonight, we'll hear a version from 1929, and then we'll hear the same song 20-something years later in the early 1950s. So, same, well, not necessarily the same artists, but, but Mr. Hawkins.
Coleman's in both, though.
He certainly is, that's right.
No.
So, this is such a great song. I love it. Let's have a listen.
It is.
Sound City Blue Blowers with Coleman Hawkins, our special feature performer for Missions tonight, and that was If I Could Be With You, 1 hour tonight. Now, we'll move forward a couple of decades and hear the same piece played by Mr. C.H. in 1952. Well, there we have it, Coleman Hawkins. And
beautiful.
Oh, wow, it's so lyrical, isn't it? He's got a really sort of lyrical approach and very sort of like he's inventing melodies. It's got that sort of,
that's it.
That style of improvisation.
Yeah, I mean, that is jazz, sort of the way jazz sort of should be. It's, quintessential jazz, because he's really making up a different tune, a different thing to what.
Yeah, well, his phrases have really got they really got a nice arch to them, and then he's very mindful of keeping a melodic shape all the time.
Yeah, and that's it. That's what I'm. Yes.
Yeah, you hear a lot of sort of jazz solos which sort of don't go anywhere. Well, they do.
Yeah, that's right.
They're sort of like statements that don't evolve necessarily.
They're not connected to each other necessarily.
That's right. But in this instance, I thought that I really enjoyed this. I was just following the line. I mean, it's a really linear approach, and
lovely stuff.
Yeah, and beautiful articulation. It's got that slap tongue, that sort of real edge to the sound, that raw edge as well, which seems to be a caricature of his as well. Yeah, so it's good to hear. But,
So
So
he really had developed, hadn't he, in those
Definitely. In terms of melodic invention, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of his big hits from the 30s was Body and Soul. I think it became a bestseller, actually.
Yeah, it did.
So we can probably listen to that one because I think that will also highlight his vocal qualities. So, let's hear this. It's on the...
I read there was a quote that perhaps a bit unfair that said you had to listen very hard to the first 4 bars of his solos because after that you had no idea exactly what it came from.
Okay. Fair enough.
Terribly harsh.
That is a harsh criticism, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it was a tongue in cheek.
It sounds like it might be. Yeah. All right. Well, let's have a listen to Body and Soul, big hit in 1939. It's very florid, isn't it?
Yes, very florid, lovely.
Yeah, I do like the sense of line. I always struggled a little bit with saxophone players who have a fragmented approach to improvising, and I do like the way he completes the phrase. But that appeals to my classical music sensibilities, I think.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Something like that. I don't know. Yeah. But I particularly like that performance. But I can see that criticism you said because it really could almost be anything after the first 4 bars.
Well, that's right. There's a hint of that there.
Yeah, but that's okay. Well, it's
not a bad thing.
Not at all. He was inventing his own tune based on the
If you want to follow the melody, you can go and listen to Victor Sylvester,
That's exactly it. Well, we'll certainly discover a bit of that later on, a bit further down the stream. But
it gets worse, that's right.
It does. But anyhow, I thought that was particularly Beautiful playing. And Mr. Hawkins, now I'm going to refer to your list now, Frank, because we've got that all squared up now. I've got quite a few of them already.
Okay, well, that was very good, Steve. You've set the earlier part. You've documented that very well.
Well, we've got the early sessions. Now you can tell us about Milt Jackson and Mr. Hawkins.
It's a sextet.
Yeah. Wait a minute. No. I've got Ben Webster first. Ben Webster.
Oh, well, yeah. Yes. Well, Ben, of course, is another sax player.
Mm.
And it's interesting to compare and contrast Coleman, Hawkins and Ben Webster.
Yeah.
Webster has a more breathy, sort of husky sort of tone.
Mm.
And I'd say not quite as lyrical as Mr. Coleman.
Okay.
But they're both great players in their own way.
Sure. All right. Well, let's have a listen to this track. It's It Never Entered My Mind is the name of the recording from the late 1950s.
Yeah.
very sweet.
Very sweet. It's easy to tell them apart, isn't it?
Yeah, very distinctive character, both artists. Yeah. Oh, that was great. I don't know much about Ben Webster. Was he sort of involved in the swing era?
I don't know too much about him either, really.
Yeah.
I don't. I think he. No, I don't think he was too heavily. I haven't heard of him being in swing bands. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Really
maybe he's quite a lot younger than Hawkins, isn't he?
Yeah. I think he's later. I think he went right on into the 70s. I think.
Right.
Beyond,
yes.
and perhaps beyond.
Yeah.
But. Yeah.
Okay, well, very good.
Much softer sound, isn't it?
Definitely. No, you've got quite a different timbre altogether, and that breathy sound, which is captured very well in those recordings in the 50s. Yeah, with good mics and with quiet surface, you can really capture the atmosphere. And
that's right.
Yeah, it had a nice...
Get all that breath there.
That's right, nice reverb component.
Oh, yes. Look,
that's obligatory,
never goes astray.
It doesn't.
I like a little bit of reverb. As long as it's not overdone.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, no, it's very effective. It's great. There's a nice sort of just a gentle dialogue. And it's like two people having a conversation, really. And
I think so.
Yeah, and with their own distinctive characters. Very nice. I like it. Yeah, it's good to hear. So thank you for that. Yeah. And we've got more. Look, we've got a great list here. You've got.
Yeah, don't feel any pressure to play them all. I just thought I'd give you a choice.
I'm happy to run with it because they're good. And no, this will be wonderful to hear because I really don't know anything from the later era at all. And it's an eye-opener for me, so that's a good thing. Now, here we go. We've just heard Mr. Webster. Now, here we go. Milt Jackson, and the sextet. So, in Sandra's Blues. So, give me a little bit of background.
So I know very little. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't auditioned it, but it will be good. It will be good.
Okay, sure. All right. Well, let's have a listen, and then we'll sort of we'll cross-reference it afterwards.
It'll be a pickup sextet. Bill didn't have a regular sextet, but they will all be good, very well regarded jazz musos.
Okay, very good. All right, let's have a listen. Beanbags is the name of the album, and Sandra's Blues. Superb. They allow they allow each other so much space, don't they? It's just this gentle dialogue, and I could listen to that for hours.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. It's absolutely devoid of stress or strain or anything. It's just
there's no egos there. They just the beautiful way they accommodate each other, and I love the way Milt Jackson just drips. It just sort of morphs.
Yeah, he does.
By playing, it's just I love the way he just sort of fills in the gap, and it just happens. It just aspirates.
I think that's actually I think it was the Modern Jazz Quartet plus a guitar.
Right. Yeah.
Plus something else. I'm not quite sure what the sixth instrument was.
Yeah.
But
I'm really thrilled that you put Bags Milton on the map for me.
Now, I'll tell you, the title of the album comes from the two nicknames for Hawkins and Jackson.
Okay.
Coleman Hawkins was known as Bean for some reason that he never understood. And Milt Jackson was called Bags, allegedly because of the bags under his eyes, but I think there might be more sinister reasons that he didn't like to talk about.
Yes, yeah, and the Bean. I was reading about the nickname Bean, and there may be some sort of young something that happened as a kid or a comic or something.
Oh,
or other people think it's the shape of his head. But whatever it is, it's stuck. And
I also heard that he used to say, he used to always say, "I haven't got a bean."
Oh, that's right. That's right. That was another one too. So I think there were a few. I think he was happy with it. Yeah. Oh, that was just wonderful. I really enjoyed that. That's the sort of jazz, the more modern style jazz that really just chills me. It's good.
Yeah. It's pretty nice.
In the best sense. I just feel relaxed listening to it, and I could just go on and on. I need to hear more of that sort of music, I think. Yeah. So that was most excellent. Thank you for that. And now we've got some examples of Mr. Hawkins moving into the bebop zone. And you've got one with Dizzy, and you've also got one with Miles Davis. So I was wondering, I was looking up, and it said that this recording with Dizzy is, some people consider, the very first bebop track.
I meant to, yes, that's quite right. We learned that this afternoon.
Right, so that's sort of rather significant, isn't it? So
very, yes.
So he was sort of there at the birth.
I think it was 1944.
That's
Steve.
correct. That's right. Yes, that's what it says here. So this is really quite interesting. So bebop, I'll wait and hear this before I comment further, but I sort of associate it with a more frenetic form and harmonically less determined. The harmonic extensions are such that the music has a very different sort of solidity to it, I suppose.
Or lack thereof.
The lack thereof, that's right. But anyhow, we'll have a listen to this Boudetard, I think it's called, and it's Coleman Hawkins and Dizzy Gillespie in 1944. Wow. That's interesting to hear the sort of swing and ascendant there. It's still quite strong, but the solos are moving into a completely different sphere, aren't they?
Yeah, they're quite certainly breaking new ground indeed.
They are. And harmonic extension, different type of phrasing, more mosaic-like, hyper virtuosity, certainly in the case of Dizzy, and and range. I mean, gosh. It's quite. That's quite interesting to hear that, and I can hear how it's sort of evolving into something else. Jazz is sort of moving. In. So there we go, 1944, and it's early 44 too. So it's not that far.
That is a lot earlier. I'd have to say earlier. Sorry, than I thought Bop had got started. I thought it was a creation of the 50s, really.
Yeah, I always associate it with the later era, and so that was really interesting to hear that. Yeah, no, look, I enjoyed that. I thought there was a lot of sort of progressiveness about that. I could really sense that yearning for pushing the boundaries and finding a new voice. Good. And I could tell that Dizzy and Hawkins were feeding off each other in that recording as well.
See, and Hawkins embraced it just as eagerly and as successfully as Dizzy was, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's someone complete command. He transcends the instrument. See, this is it. With someone like him who's got such a good harmonic sense and a stronger musical imagination, really whatever they think they can play.
Yes, that's right.
So that's it. I mean, not many musicians can really inhabit that space. Most people are sort of shackled to their instrument in one way or another. But in rare instances, people can transcend and just have a strong imagination which they can follow on instinct. But that's tremendous. Well, the next one is also a boppy bebop tune, and it's the one.
Yes.
This is the being a rebop, and this is a recording with Miles Davis and the group from a couple of years later. I think 1947 is this recording. I think it's a few years later. But let's have a listen and see what they do. Have you got any comment before we kick in?
No, I haven't heavily researched it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries. We'll have a listen and we'll hear Being a Rebop. Miles Davis and the Coleman Hawkins Bean a Rebop, a recording from 1947, and you can really hear that sort of mosaic-like quality of those riffs. It's sort of fragmenting in one sense.
Yeah, it is, and even when they're playing unison, it's obviously still very tight. And you know, quite new to jazz, really.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's most interesting to hear that, and I sort of associate that with sort of the big band sound of the later generations, which is quite sort of punctuated and fragmented and sort of dense. And it's look, it's very interesting, good to hear, and look, he's so adaptable, isn't he? It's just all.
Oh, he's amazing. I had no idea really, to be honest. Until I didn't realise he covered such a breadth. Of time and styles.
That's it. Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? When you think of those recordings from way back in
the 20s, 23. Yeah,
I know. I mean, but there was very few in those early days. There was not much to draw on, really. I mean,
no.
So you were basically inventing the form. But anyhow, it's quite incredible that he lasted the generations and was able to move with the times.
You know what? I think I'm pretty sure if someone like Bix had lived, he would have gone along in the same way.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have. I have no doubt in my mind. When you listen to those piano compositions, Mist and Candlelights, those tunes are they're like Ravel. It's music that's harmonically so progressive. It's really.
He would have loved this stuff, I reckon.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have. He would have found a real voice in the style of music. So, that's a very interesting one to contemplate. But that was good, thank you. And the last one on your excellent playlist is... I'm enjoying it. I think it's just brilliant. Here we go. It's...
this is the one in England.
London, Coleman Hawkins is live in England, and The Girl from Ipanema, which, of course, is a Yobim song. And so I wonder what he does with this. I'd like to hear this because I know the song from Astrid Gilberto.
Same,
which is just a real fave. And
total.
Yeah, but before playing this, can I ask you, did he have... I wonder if he had any association with Charlie Parker at all?
Yes, he did. Yes. There are tracks out there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
In my quick combing of the net.
Yeah.
Yes, they can be found.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, that's for another time. I'd like to explore that because Charlie Parker, of course, has sort of heralded the new era, and then that would have been a real meeting of the minds, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Yep. All right. Well, let's have a listen to this recording live in England. It's up for TV special in 1964. So an older Coleman Hawkins here, live in England, and The Girl from Ipanema.
And to close the ballad medley, Harry Edison's choice. Rather a surprising one. The Girl from Ipanema.
Brilliant. Oh, there we go. There's only one thing. Coleman Hawkins wasn't on it.
Yeah. What? No, that'll teach me not to audition tracks.
It's absolutely fine. I loved it. It was Harry Sweet's edit. No, not at all. It was Harry Sweet's Edison, and I was reading about him. I loved it. I thought it just had a lovely, smooth style of playing.
Beautiful, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, not at all. In fact, it's a bit. Look, it's easy mistake to make because I was looking at this too, and it says Coleman Hawkins live in England, done in '64. But and then in the comments, where's Hawkins? Where's Hawkins?
I know.
People have got this list here, and they say, where is he? But it doesn't matter, you know. I mean, I wouldn't have heard this otherwise, and I think this is great. And Harry Edison, of course, had a really big impact on Count Basie's outfit. He was the Basie sort of high screecher for a long time, and and you hear him on Sinatra tracks, and his muted trumpet is quite well known. And I was just reading then that he was in the Blues Rhythm Band, which was at the Cotton Club, so he goes back a fair way to the early 1930s.
He does. Well, that was pretty progressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That was. You could mistake that for Miles, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved it. Great performance. Yeah, I love the way he played really sotto voce at the start. It was just, just so chill.
Harry Sweets Edison. I wonder if he was related to Thomas Edison.
I wonder.
I doubt it.
Different nationality, but
Yeah.
yeah, Afro-American, and but never mind. You never know. But great recording that was, and that was live on British TV. And it's probably part of a concert where
that'll be it. I know that'll teach. I was sort of doing it on the fly tonight. I didn't.
That's fine. No, it's fine. It
You know
doesn't
how it
matter
is.
at all. I mean, there's no rights or wrong with any of this. It's just it's a meander. So we can move between these spaces, and sometimes things work out in different ways. So
That's right.
That's all good. So thank you. It was great to hear those recordings and flesh out the picture a bit about Mr. Hawkins. Was there any other sort of biographical stuff today at the U3A jazz thing that you went to?
Well, there is a very good long extended interview with him on the net. It's done by somebody called Schoenberg.
Mm-hmm.
It's on YouTube. It's very, easily accessed. If you go to YouTube, put in his name.
Yep.
It will come up, and it goes for about 90 minutes.
Oh, right. Okay.
If you want to know.
Yeah.
And it's he's very open and covers his whole life, really.
Right. Okay.
In a very open, candid, and not self-effacing and not self-aggrandizing. It's very, and he really was obviously really thinking about his answers. So, he took the interview very seriously.
Oh, very good. Oh, well, that'll be great to hear. I'd like to hear that. So, so in the session today, they played that and then some selections, and is that the way it was?
Yes, he didn't play all of it because we decided that we wanted to hear some music, and we were running out of time.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard it all myself.
Okay.
But it is very much worth. If you've got an interest in him, in Coleman, then it's well worth hearing.
I certainly will listen to it. I'll find an opportunity and sit down and indulge. That would be great.
Even if you do it in bits, it's worth the time.
Okay.
Otherwise, not too much. He unfortunately his last couple of years were not very good for him. He fell into a severe depression and then got into heavy drinking.
Oh, did he really?
And and that curtailed his artistic output, as would inevitably happen.
Oh, that's a tragedy.
So when he passed, I don't think he was in a good place.
No,
from the sound of
it's a sad reality that bestows a lot of musicians, unfortunately, is the roller coaster of emotions. And then substance abuse. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm pleased to have had an expose on Coleman Hawkins, and it's a point of departure, as all these things are. It sort of leads into new things. So thank you. I've got something a little bit challenging.
Yes, I know.
But I won't. Look, I'm not going to dwell on this too much. I think it's hard to sort of put into context. And look, I'll introduce the subject. The subject is Anton Webern, who was a second Viennese school composer of the atonal or serialist tradition. So therefore, he departed from the harmonic language that we sort of associate with Western music, really from the very early days. But interestingly, he was a scholar in Renaissance music. Now, that's something I only found out recently. Yeah, he was. And also he was a student of Schoenberg, and he wrote a lot of music when he was young, which emboldened and really addressed the sort of harmonies that Mahler and the late Romanticists were using. And then he made a very conscious decision, as did a lot of the Second Viennese School. They made a conscious decision to depart from that and to explore a new harmonic language. They wanted something innovative, and the tone rows, of course, have their own sort of implicit logic, but they are not easy on the ears because it's in our DNA to sort of try and control dissonance and consonance in music. So in many ways, this is just super challenging. But I think the best way forward is to play. There's a fellow I found online who does a 10-minute quick fast sort of a Vsauce-like brief on the history of Webern, and then I think it'd be nice to play that, and then just a couple of small examples. Now, a lot of his music's very short, but but the most interesting thing about them is that he had this idea of not looking at music in a linear way, rather seeing things as little sort of ecstatic episodes. So he wanted to sort of see music in terms of these sort of spontaneous outbursts or moments or utterances, rather than something that's sort of more narrative, or more linear. So, and that's something I've always thought about. It's quite fragmented, but very intense. So what we might do is, before doing that though, I'm going to try and just sort of give a little bit more extra context. Webern was quite well known for arranging other music as well, and he made a very beautiful arrangement of the music of Bach, and one of the a fugue actually. So I'm just trying to find it here. It's on the list, and it's really worth hearing. And oh gosh, if I can find it now. I might have to go for a bit of a search and do that later. Maybe we'll hear the recording of we'll hear the Bach a bit later on. And so here it is. I found it. Sorry. And look, we'll listen to it. Probably won't get time to listen to all of it, but have a listen to this. It's from one of the Ricker cars, and it's a fugue of Bach's as arranged by Anton Weber, and this sort of illuminates his ability to work with conventional harmony. So we'll just usher this one into the. Here we go. And we'll just make this a sample of this arrangement of Bach's fugue from one of the Ricker cars and the music of Anton Webern. And you can
Steve,
hear...
I don't want to... Can I just say, I don't want to derail the trip along to Webern, but I think that's part of a thing called the musical offering.
Oh, okay, sure. That's fine.
Now, I know about the musical offering, but now's not the time to talk about it.
Yeah.
It in itself, there's a very interesting
story
about how that...
Yes.
You'd be aware of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is from the musical offering. And it's also called a Rickekarte as well. Is another name for it. So yes, but that's good to know. And but very, very sensitively arranged. And I love the use of orchestral colours in the instrumental choices there. And I think that sort of reveals sort of a more a connected Webern as a composer who embraced tradition as well. So I thought that was necessary to sort of preempt the story a little bit. And also, look, I'll give an example of his Passacaglia for orchestra. This is his Opus 1, and it's the only tonal work that he kept in his canon. The rest of these music he dismissed, but the Opus 1 was really the last big tonal work that he wrote. And it's a Passacaglia for full orchestra, but it's just so full of really rich textures, and it's his masterful use of the orchestra. And you'll hear that, and also really extending his harmonic language, and it helps understand that he wanted to he was pushing boundaries and wanted to eventually derive a new musical language. But look, let's have a listen to it. I'll play a bit of it, and it's Stokowski conducting the Philadelphia Orchestra, I think. Well, I think it's announced. Let's have a listen.
From the Historic Academy of Music in Philadelphia, we bring you another in our series of transcribed concerts by the world-renowned Philadelphia Orchestra. The applause you hear greets the appearance on stage of Leopold Stokowski, this week's guest conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And in just a moment, we will hear the Philadelphia Orchestra under his distinguished direction in a performance of the Passacaglia Opus 1 by Anton Webern.
So at this point I'll take a fade, and we just listened to an excerpt from Webern's Passacaglia for orchestra, recording with Stokowski in 1962. And you can really hear that surging, voluminous, orchestral sound that he was working with. And I think it's just a master of orchestral colour.
And Stokowski's the one to bring it out.
It certainly is. I just think there's a real synergy there. But that's really the only work of its kind that Webern sort of accepted as a part of his journey. His earlier works he destroyed, and that's the one that he heralded. And but look, I love that piece. I've listened to it a few times this week. It goes for quite a lot longer, and but it's just full of bloom, and it's turgid. It's got lots of it's sort of deep unrest, really. And
I know.
It's not easy music.
It's a troubled soul, isn't it?
It is, most definitely. Now that sort of leads in a little bit to the story of his life. Now, this is a brief little tale, but I'll let someone else explain it, because people are probably sick of hearing my voice. And this fellow, this academic, he explains it very well. And he also sort of, what I like about this little chat, as I'm looking for it, is that the fellow also gives people permission not to like Webern as well, which I think is a very important thing.
That is a good thing to do.
I think you have to do that, and you have to say that he is what he is, and it doesn't appeal to everybody. But if you feel like you'd like to become connected on any level, he explains the story. Now I'm looking for it as I speak. This happens all too often when I've got 1,000 things set up on YT that I can't find what I'm looking for. And now I'm looking back at the Thunderbirds as before that. All right, what I'll have to do, I'll have to just do what I usually do when this sort of thing happens. All right, we'll play a piece from a later piece. It's quite short, and this is an example of, it's an interesting direct contrast to what we've just heard. It's actually a piano work. No, I'll play an excerpt from his Concerto for 9 Instruments, Opus 24, and you'll hear that there is a totally different musical language at this point. The Spartan World of Anton Webern, and that was just a selection from his Concerto for 9 Instruments. And it's there's a lot of interplay between the parts, but it uses obviously a completely different harmonic language, and it's very mosaic or very fragmented. And
I see what you mean about that. It certainly is. But I kind of like that because it gives you time to think about one phrase. It's sort of, there's room in there to absorb it.
Yes, I acknowledge that. I think you're right. There is, and it sort of grows on me. I've been listening to quite a lot this week, and I'm finding the music is it's not the sort of thing I'd ever sort of consciously want to choose all the time. I'm not really into contemporary music in a big way, but sometimes it's just interesting to listen to a different musical language and a very different concept of how music can be presented and experienced. So I think this little very short talk only goes for a few minutes, and this fellow I think covers all of this ground really well. So let's have a listen to.
Most interesting. It absolutely. Al Van Berg did it for me. Broke through with part of Lulu and his violin concerto.
Definitely, and Wozak, wonderful composer Al Van Berg. His music is very lyrical, and Webern sort of moved in a different direction. But look, let's have a listen to this quick little chat.
Who wrote some of the strangest and most compelling music of the 20th century. It's impossible to explain either his life or his work, or both, in 10 minutes, but I'm going to do my best and we'll see what comes out of it. Here's an interesting thing to think about. In 1945, Anton Webern was shot to death by an American soldier in what were apparently accidental circumstances. He was 60 years old. His belongings were put into coal sacks, so all of his manuscripts, letters, photographs, thousands of historically precious documents, and were used for kindling by a Russian lodger who took over his house during the Allied occupation of Austria. Today, Anton von Webern's papers are stored in a meticulously temperature-controlled environment in an institution in Switzerland. They were saved only by the purest accident, the purest chance. So it's unbelievably fortunate that we still have them. I think it's interesting to consider how it is that such a significant figure could have died in such horrific circumstances with his work essentially on the brink of destruction. Anton von Webern was born into what was then Austria-Hungary in Vienna in 1883. So he was born into essentially an imperial city in what was then a 1,000-year-old empire, the last vestige, the last incarnation of the Habsburg Empire. And when he died in 1945, it was in Allied occupied Austria. It was essentially a tiny state that was financially ruined, that was ruined in terms of its infrastructure. So one of the compelling facts about Webern's life is that it's a uniquely harsh one, even by the standards of a lot of historical composers. So Webern essentially, throughout the course of his life, lost everything that you can possibly lose that gives one a sense of stability. So let's look at the list. So he lost his country through the carving up of Austria-Hungary after the First World War. He lost any possible way of making a living throughout the 1930s. His music was banned by the Nazis. He had almost no professional opportunities whatsoever, not even teaching. His sole income at the outset of the 1930s involved things like teaching the blind and teaching a workers' chorus. And even such meager possibilities as those were denied to him over the course of the decade. His music was, well, to say it was misunderstood would be putting it unbelievably mildly. It was incomprehensible, bordering on insane as far as most audiences were concerned at the time. He almost never heard his music, except at the outset of his career, although his performance opportunities dwindled over the course of his life. He lost his son in February 1945. The Allies ambushed him and killed him. And Webern himself was killed only a few months later. So what's particularly terrible about this is that only a few years after his entirely accidental death, Webern became an international cultural icon and hero, and he profoundly changed the way music was written in the second half of the 20th century. So it's just tragic beyond words that he would face so much loss, that he would be so thoroughly maligned and misunderstood over the course of his life. And then worst of all, he would die just shortly before he achieved, finally, international recognition in absolutely brutal accidental circumstances. Right, so it doesn't get much worse than that. And yet, the thing that's so remarkable is he kept writing his music and he maintained incredibly high standards, artistic standards. And so this was really a solitary enterprise, fundamentally. All right, so that's the broad outlines of his life. Let's briefly talk about his music. So Arnold Schoenberg once famously said in his introduction to the Bagatelles, Opus 9 by Webern, that Webern condenses a novel into a sigh. In other words, his music has the strange property, almost unique in Western music, of being essentially atemporal. So that's a really, really strange thing, because generally speaking in music, particularly in classical music, you have some form of linear trajectory that takes you from point A to point B in a way that is narratively coherent and dramatically coherent. In Webern, you don't have that. You don't have development. You don't have any sort of obvious trajectory. What you have are instants of almost limitless potential to signify. Ecstatic moments. Moments that are outside of time. And the way that the different events relate to each other in his music essentially is outside of time. You don't experience it in a linear fashion. In Webern, you have tiny, tiny fragments or cells that can be heard forwards, they can be heard backwards, they can be heard simultaneously with various different permutations. There's all sorts of extraordinarily complex manipulations going on in his mature work. You don't really hear any of that consciously, and you're not really meant to either. But it's certainly asking a lot of audiences in the sense that everything that allows us traditionally to comprehend the trajectory of a musical composition is missing in Webern. So, in other words, in a mature work, you might have a movement that lasts 1 or 2 minutes, in which there is so much going on that it could take you months to unravel it all and sort of understand what's going on a technical level. What can you possibly hope presenting a work such as that in a public concert? Obviously, all of us have had transcendental experiences in concerts where we're absolutely riveted, but generally speaking, you tend to lapse in and out of total concentration when you're listening, which is normal. In Webern, you can't really do that. You can't really get away with it because some of his pieces are just so short. For example, take the 3 little cello pieces, Opus 11. The second movement is about 30 seconds long. If you drift off for a minute, you'll have missed it. You just won't have heard the piece, and you won't get another chance in that concert. So it's music that really cries out to be recorded. It's music that needs to be heard a number of times in circumstances that really didn't exist during his lifetime, but they do exist now. So you can go onto YouTube, you can hear any of his compositions any amount of times that you like. You can hear very, very good recordings, and I think that makes it actually quite a bit easier to appreciate what he was up to. So here's another interesting fact about Webern. His music simultaneously looks backwards and forwards. Now, he's often been described as a musical avant-gardist or as someone who's somehow attempting to destroy the conventional way that music functions. Actually, Webern's doctoral thesis when he was a student in Vienna in the early part of the 20th century was on Heinrich Isaac. So Isaac was a Renaissance composer, and Webern's doctoral work consisted essentially of transcribing this archaic form of music notation into contemporary notation and editing the works. And Webern was an authority on Renaissance polyphony. So that was a very unusual thing at the beginning of the 20th century. Only a very tiny handful of specialists knew anything about this music. On the one hand, you have him being totally fascinated by the rigor, the extreme condensation, the compositional ingenuity, the austerity of Renaissance counterpoint. And on the other hand, he's completely fascinated with the hypertrophied late Romanticism of Mahler and early Schoenberg. And pieces such as Mahler's late symphonies, which are written for enormous forces, which can last up to 90 minutes in performance, just gargantuan creations of the most intense subjective expressivity possible. So how do you reconcile those two things? How do you reconcile this this urge towards the utterly private, towards the utterly condensed, the atemporal, ecstatic, transcendental moment that has neither beginning nor future, that is simply an infinitely condensed moment collapsed into a very, very short span of time, with music of absolutely paroxysmal expressivity. That's what Webern does. That's really challenging to listen to. There's no question, but it's worth it. And it's music that rewards close attention a great deal. It doesn't reward casual listening. I'll be the first to admit that. You're not going to throw on a Webern CD while you're doing the dishes. But if you can set aside a little bit of time to listen to his music closely, you might not like it. Not everybody does. It's an acquired taste. It's one of those things. It's like eating octopus or something. You know, not everybody is going to do it. But those who do and who appreciate it will find it to be among the most remarkable music ever written. Have a listen, see what you think, and try to imagine what sort of a man would write this sort of music in those circumstances, knowing what his life was like, and not give up. Webern said of his early works that all of his music up to that point was about the death of his mother. He was an intensely, almost uncontrollably emotional man. And yet, the post-war avant-gardists took up the aspect of Webern that was useful to them, which was the sort of constructivist Webern, the Webern who was obsessed with extreme compositional technical ingenuity, with devising up entirely new grammatical rules for structuring music. That was a means to an end, but it wasn't the point. It was never the point. And if you want to understand Webern, start with his early works. They're absolutely beautiful works written in a post-romantic idiom. And then listen to the late works and try to figure out how he got from A to B. It's a really strange thing. It's one of the most unique bodies of work in music history, and I would certainly encourage anyone to check him out. Webern did not destroy music. He added something. We don't need everybody to be writing bad copies of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Webern contributed a new flavor, a new color, a new sound to music history, and we are better off for it. So again, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. But I wouldn't want anyone who could like it to miss out on it, because it is such an extraordinary and absolutely original body of work.
Well, that's a tantalizing invitation there by Samuel Andreev.
Yes.
And I think that paints quite a sort of a clear picture about the man and some background and the tragedy of his circumstance, which is just something quite terrifying, really. Poor fellow went out to have a cigarette during curfew, and GI shot him.
He was taken for the enemy.
Yeah. And it's an absolutely shocking situation. I mean, it's a really appalling. Yeah, but interesting too. And what I liked about that little introduction was that, I mean, Webern is known for his constructivism and the intellectual background to the music. It's highly mathematical, and people just go to town and they dissect it and they find all this mathematical meaning in it. And it fulfills a dream. But I'm really pleased that he said that was just a means to an end. And there is an emotional language, but it's a different emotional language, and that sort of a temporal sort of notion of music existing in just sort of sporadic fragments rather than a narrative per se is, I think, a really interesting concept, because, we sort of experience so many things in life in a linear way, and to sort of see music abstracted in this way is, philosophically at least, quite interesting.
Certainly is. I like the way that he emphasised really that acknowledged that a lot of people wouldn't like it, and it sort of takes the pressure off the initial listener.
It certainly does.
Feel that, which gives you a much better chance of seeing what's good in it.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think that's very important, because I think to have open ears, it's not going to be appealed straight away. This sort of thing. It's such it comes from a very different place, but it helps to understand a little bit about what the person behind it and a need to sort of form a different musical language.
So you don't need to understand the mathematics behind what he's doing.
No, it's a sound world. I personally find it quite tantalising. I mean, I don't expect other people to, but in some ways I find it quite beautiful. And the great thing is all the pieces are so short.
Mercifully so, some would say.
That's right, exactly. Well, here we go. I acknowledge that fully. I think it's, and when you're dealing with something that's not normal, it's sort of easier to digest in small snapshots, I think, rather than try and discern something like that poor old Russian composer who wrote the piece that went for 24 hours.
Oh yes, that was a big ask, Steve. It was a big ask.
I think it's a very big ask. So most of Weyburn's music only goes for 5 minutes or less. I'll just play a couple of quick little things, very short things, because it's getting late.
My mindset is to let it wash over me and not sort of almost not react at all.
Yep. That's exactly what I do.
Hearing.
Yep, and same here. I don't let my mind try and organise it, because you end up being frustrated and you end up thinking, I'm incapable of experiencing this music because I can't assemble it or I can't control it with my own expectations. And I think you have to almost have a Zen-like approach to something like this, and just
I relate it to listening to music half asleep.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. I think that with a lot of contemporary music, that's the way. Or like listening to birdsong. And just hearing it for what it is, and sometimes repeated listenings can really you can form constructs of a different kind, so there's an interesting challenge there too.
I had to hear the Alvan Berg a few times.
Yeah, sure.
Really, and I started off having to just turn off. I initially started feeling this is crap.
Yeah. You're getting some feedback there, Frank. Sorry, you're getting some.
Sorry, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
That's okay. That's just coming through. It's
getting tired.
That's fine.
So anyway, but look, so this is going to be worth. I'll look up some more of his stuff. There'll be plenty around.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of material there. I'll put some very tiny little excerpts on, just like 1 minute grabs of a couple of things, just to sort of paint a little bit of context to what we've just heard, and then that'll sort of wrap things. But look, let's have a listen to a bit of his Six Bagatelles, a very early work, and this is the one that Schoenberg thought concentrates a whole novel into a sigh. I like that. And
that's lovely.
Condenses. And someone's written here that when you analyse the bagatelles, you learn that they're probably the most concentrated music ever written. Well, yes. One of them is only 9 measures long, but manages to suggest an entire sonata rondo form. Well, there we go. That's a constructivist thought. But let's just hear how it presents emotionally. And that was it. Six bagatelles for string quartet, Opus 9. A work written between 1911 and 1913. Very early on for that, for music of that level of abstraction.
Did he write very much?
Not a huge amount, no. It'd be probably under 100 works at a guess.
Yes, oh yes.
But interesting. So there we, and very short movements. Some of the movements are indeed 1 minute long or less, and
right.
So it's all very, very condensed. And here's another, just a very. I'll only play about a minute of this, and of a chamber work, and for I think it's for clarinet and piano. Oh, I can't remember the instrumentation. Let's have a listen. Quite a delightful timbral mix, I think. It's the alto, sax, clarinet,
the tone mix is interesting, or the timbre mix is interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's quite enjoyed hearing those instruments, and it's very spacious. It's interesting that the score's up on the screen with that one, so I'm reading the score as it's being played, but it's incredibly complex writing. You have to the counting.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do it, but yeah. Now, one of his
it doesn't have a time signature, does it?
No, it does. Yes, and that's highly regulated. It's very time specific. It's not. There's no aleatoric writing at all. It's all conventional nomenclature. And but the time signature changes every bar. So I'm just looking here. It's 5/8 one bar, 3/8 another, 4/8. So if you're playing
you can't count it.
Not easily. You'd have to count it as a constant, like in a quaver, and just have to.
Yes.
But
it's a bar at a time.
You would. I think you'd have to use a metronome or something to sort of get it into your DNA if you're going to perform a work like that.
Be a devil to sight read, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine it. Finally, I'll just put a tiny bit of his cantata on, the second movement of his second cantata. It's a solo, bass solo, I think it is. But I thought this was particularly beautiful, and it's quite lyrical. So we'll hear a little of this. I think this is Opus 31. So it's not that many opuses, but anyhow, this is one of his most famous pieces.
Das weiße Sternenzelt ist
ewiges Fan in ewige Frühe bricht. Herz, der kleinste
That's a work entitled Very Deep Innermost Life Sings. It's the second movement from his cantata number 2. And that's one of his longest pieces. The whole cantata goes for, wait for it, 15 minutes. So, and that's the second movement.
One of the shorter cantatas in the canon.
Yes.
Certainly.
Yes. So anyhow, the music of Anton Webern, and he's one of the more interesting composers from the second Viennese school. So I thought we'd do a little expose on just a few of his works and just put him on the map, I think. And
did he write the lyrics for that as well?
I think he did. I think so. Yeah. But I found that strangely peaceful, actually.
It did have a peaceful sort of rested air, didn't it?
It seemed to. It's quite lyrical and in its own way. But, just a very different harmonic language. So, it's thought that would be... sometimes it's nice to sort of look out of the square. And for me, it's a connection with other traditions and things. So... there we go. That's our Webern expose, and we'll maybe return to something one day. We'll see. There's a lot of other good music out there too. But
maybe play a little Alvan Berg sometime.
I think it would be really good to do a whole program on Berg's music and pick out some really good examples. He's a very interesting composer, and
that's my way to do it at the moment.
Yeah. I love the violin concerto. And,
I forgot that it was 12 tone almost.
Yeah, it's right. It's sort of it's very romantic. It's really a romantic work. But he just uses a different harmonic language, but it sort of still has a sense of cause and effect or consonance and dissonance. It has gravity, I think, in a harmonic sense, even if it is atonal. And I think that's the beauty in it, that it sort of addresses both worlds in its own inimitable way.
Yeah, I found it accessible anyway.
Sure, no, I agree.
And I was surprised that I did.
Yeah. It's a great work. Well, Frank, I suppose we've been at it for a while with our selections, and I'm going to finish up with Kate's little piece.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, she did it. She recorded it this afternoon. So I think
you should have played it earlier, Steve.
Yeah, I might play it again tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, yeah,
as
please
well.
do.
And but I'll play it now. It's a movement from a Bach, a CP Bach sonata she's been working on, And I'm switching things in now. So I think it came up pretty well. So
I was all set to ask you about that was going to be about whether you had such a thing from Kate.
Okay.
So I'm glad you do.
She's keen to try and make it a Friday thing if she can. I don't know I don't know how easy it's going to be when she goes back to work, but
sure.
Well, but for the time being, it sort of gives us a focus point, and I might try and see if I can get organised in that way as well. So we'll see what happens.
Please.
We'll finish with this. It's a movement for solo flute. It's a solo flute sonata, and I think I will play it again tomorrow afternoon when there's possibly a few more people listening in.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you as always. It's been great.
Thank you as always.
And,
it always is.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Well, have a restful evening, and we'll probably speak the next time.
Now, sorry, I've just remembered.
Yeah, you got something on?
I've at last got my act together.
Yeah.
And I can come up on the coffee break tomorrow.
Oh, marvellous. Oh, that's great. Fabulous. All right. Well, I look forward to it very much. I should be fine for that, or if the transmitter works.
See how we go. My gardening knowledge is zilch, but I
okay.
I can talk about
about
other things.
Oh, yes.
But no, I'm looking forward to just saying hello and you know.
No, that'll be great. It'll be really good. Well, I can hear you quite well on 160, and I'm sure it sounds like you've made a Marconi tea, or how have you organised your?
I made a Marconi tea. Yes, yep. I short out the. All I do is short out the feed line.
Yep.
And feed it against earth.
Oh, very good. Well, that's a really effective way to do things, and it works well.
Yeah. It does. It's the only way I can load the G5RV thing.
Yes.
And I've got it. I do it on the TS990, which gives me 50 watts of AM out.
Oh, that's good. That's a nice solid signal. No, it'll be good. Well, I look forward to it very much. It'll be great to speak tomorrow, so we'll listen out for you. Well, we tend to come up a bit earlier, about 10:30.
Yes, I know. I'm a very regular listener.
Yeah. So. Okay. Sure. You're aware of our.
Yes.
So
I
believe Kevin's back in the fold.
Glad to hear. He hasn't been well, I understand.
Yes, I believe that's been the case. And there was a note came out from Paul, and to say that he was at least listening. I don't know if he's well enough to participate at this stage, but we'll wait and see. Yeah.
Do you know Bob? 3AIC, Bob Duckworth?
Yes, I do. I was wondering about. I've heard some pretty grim news about his general health. Is he?
He's a particularly good friend of mine because but apart from seeing him at the club, I meet him at the old timers lunches.
Oh yes.
And he always looks out for me, and we sit. At table together with Drew and a few other sort of old regulars, you know.
Yes. Have you heard about is he recovering?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I was going on to tell you he's had a severe stroke.
Yes, I did hear that, yes.
And he's lost his speech and down one side he can't, and he can't swallow.
Oh, no. Oh, that's tragic. So is he still in hospital?
Oh yeah, yes he is.
Yeah.
Or he has to be fed. Obviously,
if he's been fed intravenously or by tube, he can't.
Yeah. Well, one of the added difficulties is that he also has Parkinson's.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Yes.
And it's difficult for them to administer the medication that he needs for that, on top of what he needs to combat the after effects of the stroke.
Oh, I'm very sad to hear that. Bob was one of my instructors when I got my ticket. I went on to the club.
Was he really?
Yeah, to do all the theory, and he was one of the people. Jonas and Bob were the two instructors. So I've known Bob quite well, and but I did hear that news a few weeks back, and I was just wondering what the general state of affairs was, but doesn't sound good.
Not looking so good, but one never knows.
Yeah, let's hope. All right, while there's life, there's hope.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. We'll look forward to having a chat tomorrow morning. That'll be most excellent indeed. Tremendous. All right.
Indeed.
Well, we'll wind up with Kate's little performance if everything works properly. And
as usual, I'll sign out and listen on the radio.
Okay. No worries at all, Frank. Great to chat, and we'll catch you soon. Yep.
Always, Steve. Yep. Take care.
Okay. Cheers. And,
cheers.
And this is vk3sl, and we've just been chatting with Frank vk3jr on Zoom. And at this point, I'll finish off with a piece for solo flute recorded here in this booth about how many? Probably 12 hours ago.
Wonderful.
Let's have a listen. Cheers.
Cheers.